All right, so I received an email this morning that the 3 free Heartfulness meditation masterclasses will be made available for an extended period of time, and people can register for them. And then there's 3 videos that takes you through 3 consecutive days, and it's an introduction to this meditative practice. It's a Raja Yogic practice where people learn to meditate on divine light in the heart, which feels like to the heart, it feels you're feeling God's love in your heart, which is a wonderful thing to experience. And to help facilitate this practice, there is a cleaning process that is given to help clean away that anything that blocks your connection to God and feeling God's presence, feeling God's love in your heart, as well as a transmission is given to basically nurture, to bring forth this love, the presence of your soul, and it helps to get in contact with your true spiritual nature. And a number of people have started this practice through my YouTube channel here and have experienced positive results. It's a very subtle practice. It's not about having big psychedelic experiences, because God's love is subtle. It's not about opening up chakras and these types of things, having powers, spiritual powers, or anything like that. It's just about simply living a normal, everyday life, but doing it with connection with God. Now, I've been doing this practice for 23 years, and it's changed my life in so many different ways. And I wanted to talk a little bit about the emergence of the heart as a instrument to perceive the world around you, as a instrument in which you're connected to God's love. And it changes the way that you see the world, the way that you feel about things, and the way that you experience life. Because I've talked about this in some other videos, but it needs to be said over and over again. And science has begun to bear this out a little bit. And that is that within a human being, there is the mind, and everybody knows about the mind. It's where our ego is, and it's where we think and we make thoughtful decisions. It's a form of intelligence, but there's also 2 other forms of intelligence within the human framework. There is the gut. Now, the gut has more nerve endings than any other part of the body. It has more sensory apparatus. And the gut is where our lower level emotions come from. Our fears, our anger, everyone knows that. You feel these things emanating from this region of your body. And this is an etheric part as well. This is part of your energetic makeup. So on a physical level, you have all these nerve endings, and you feel these lower level emotions, lust and anger and fear and self-centered level emotions, the kind of base animalistic type primal level emotions. And then there's the intelligence of the heart, where you feel the higher level feelings, the difference between feelings and emotions, where emotions are something of a animalistic human, connected to the human body. Feelings are connected to the soul, and everybody's soul resides in one's heart. There's been a lot of heart research done by people like Joseph Chilton Pierce, and now even science is beginning to understand that there is an energetic field associated with the heart. And so the heart is where you get into your higher state of consciousness, and it's also a doorway or a gateway to the godly dimensions, the inner universe, the spiritual universe, and these other energetic levels of consciousness. And through one's heart, through connecting to the love in one's heart, you pull out the highest possible version of yourself, a reflection of your soul, the person that God wants you to become. And this modern day system, what I call the beast, they want you to accentuate your gut level intelligence. They want you to be a base level person with a lot of desires, with a lot of lower level type of consciousness. And they want you to have a big ego and develop your mind and be able to be an instrument in terms of your thinking process to do some sort of work and contribute to society. But the powers that be do not want you to develop your heart, because then you start serving God instead of them. You start having a conscience. There's things you won't do that you're supposed to do that are immoral, that are unethical, because your heart will tell you this just isn't right, because you're connected to a godly consciousness. And they want to disconnect people from this godly consciousness. So our modern day system is brutal on people's hearts. And that's why people are in so much emotional pain. People have trust issues, and their hearts have been hurt, and in most cases have been closed. I mean, if you look at a lot of the material that I cover here on this YouTube channel, and just anything that if you watch the news, if you have an open heart and you see the way that people are treating each other from the top down, if you just see the way people interact in the comment section of YouTube videos and other places, you see the way people treat each other on TV, there is just if you had an open heart, you would be in pain all the time. And that's the unfortunate nature of the world today. As you become a spiritual person and your heart opens up and you feel compassion and you feel empathy for other people and the world and everything that's going on in it, there's just the pain that you're going to feel. And that is a sad state of affairs. So I want to talk about this because it's Valentine's Day, and Valentine's Day is so much associated with the heart. When I started this heartfulness meditation 23 years ago in August, it'll be 24 years coming up this August, I had no idea about having a heart, and no idea about having some sort of energetic body there which felt love and these types of things. I know that I was a feeling person because I remember feeling bad about things that were going on in the world, or if I hurt somebody's feelings, I could feel something, but I wasn't in any way connected to my heart region, this area. And I also had, in terms of the Myers-Briggs, I'm a feeling type person. I remember there's a few incidents. I remember when I was like 14, this happened twice with my parents. And one time I had something like soccer practice, and I got up, and my mom was making me breakfast. And I was sitting at the table, and I realized that my mom loved me because I just saw her making me breakfast, and I appreciated it. Of course, I didn't say anything, but I just felt it. I felt this presence of love, and I think some tears welled up in my eyes. I was like 14 years old. And then later on that year, my mom was gone away on a trip, and me and my buddy made a zip line, and it wasn't safe, and I fell off of it and woke up in the hospital. And my dad was there, and he was completely rattled because he thought I might die. And when I woke up and I looked, I could see how worried he was, and I felt his love. And there's things that happen like that, I think, for people. You live your mundane, everyday lives, and once in a while something happens, and it's a shock or a trauma, and then you realize how much you love the people in your life. But it's a very seldom thing in the modern day system. And for most of my life, I was kind of a harsh person. I grew up in the Northeast, where running each other down was, in the sports culture, and within my family, there was just a lot of harshness. And I said a lot of things that I think hurt people because I could feel it at times in my heart. I could feel that I had hurt their heart because I felt something in my heart, but really was disconnected because this was not something that I was actively pursuing, didn't know anything about it. And when I turned 29 years old, I was a very cynical person, didn't have anything to believe in, didn't have any goals in the world. And then I stumbled into this heartfulness meditative practice. Somebody gave me a flyer or pamphlet, and I threw it on my desk because I wasn't interested in meditating. I had meditated. I had done some yoga because I wanted to enhance my basketball playing abilities. And through that yogic practice, stretching, I meditated, but I couldn't meditate for more than 5 or 10 minutes and had no interest in it. I hadn't thought about God in years, anything like that. But I picked up the pamphlet a couple months later, and I felt subtle vibrations in my heart. I haven't felt anything like that in years. I said, well, maybe there's something to this. And I went over to the trainer's house like a week later, and I received these introductory sessions that are now available on the internet. And the link is in the description box. And people can sign up for this if they haven't done this already. And I was a person that hadn't really stuck with anything before, but I did this meditative practice basically every day for the past 23 years, meditated and done the cleaning process. And it slowly wore away at whatever it was that had closed my heart. Because it's like they give the example of the water wearing away at rock, like you see the example of, say, the Grand Canyon or any of these canyons, where water, which is very soft, very subtle, wears away at the hard rock, erodes it, and wind the same way, and slowly carves out a channel, slowly opens up the rock and moves it away after years and years in a very loving and a very subtle way. Nothing dramatic, nothing, you're not using a chisel and or explosives, but something that slowly and gently wears away the solidity in one's heart. And that's how this heartfulness practice works on a day-to-day basis, and getting these individual and group sittings where this godly energy, it's called pranahuti, the forceless force. It's the utilization of the divine energy for the transformation of man. And it slowly wears away at somebody's, the solidity, the solidness in somebody's heart, the pain and the betrayal and the hurt that everyone's experienced in this life and other lives on planet Earth. And as this solidity gets worn away, people's hearts start opening, and there is the nurturing energy that's given to help people live with an open heart in a harsh world. And so, being sort of a rough person, an athlete, and hanging around with sort of like mean people, knowing a lot of mean people, it took me a while to understand the delicacy of the human heart and what happens, especially now on Valentine's Day. You see that there's so many relationships, love relationships, or relationships with family members and friends, where people's hearts start to open, and they form a bond with somebody, and they let the person in, and their heart, which they've developed coping mechanisms. We've all developed coping mechanisms to protect our hearts. And we slowly open our hearts to somebody, or people have a loving experience with somebody, but no one's been trained what to do with somebody else's heart. And when somebody gives you their heart, or they open up their heart to you, we haven't been trained on how to behave in a way that would not hurt that other person's heart. We're often harsh. Again, you look at the way that people talk to each other on the internet and in life, just critical and just no delicacy, no sense of, we're all bulls in China shop. And I certainly was like that when I started this practice years and years ago. But now understand, when people open up their heart to you, you have to be very conscious of how you treat them. And this spiritual practice, this heartfulness practice, does a wonderful thing, that when you hurt somebody else's heart, you can feel it in your own heart. You feel the pain that you've caused. And so it brings awareness to your behavior. So after doing this system for 23 years, there's a wonderful example. The second spiritual teacher of the system, Sri Ramchandra of Shah Jahanpur, was affectionately known as Babaji. Very simple man. And people came to him for spiritual training, and he would clean their hearts and then transmit this divine energy into their hearts. And once in a while, he would see that they needed some sort of character correction. They needed some conscious awakening of a fault that they weren't aware of. But he wouldn't directly say, hey, look, you do this thing, or you have this character quality that's a fault, and you need to fix it. He just wouldn't blurt it out. He would find a very delicate way. He would tell a story. People would be sitting around him, and he'd tell a very subtle story, not looking at the person, not directing any negativity towards them, but tell them a story in which their issue would be brought to light. And then if the person wasn't able to understand the subtle nature of what he was saying, some sort of life event would be triggered, and the thing they needed to correct in themselves would be brought to their consciousness. So he didn't hurt this person's heart. He didn't say anything negative to them, that would make them feel bad about themselves and cause them to close up, because that's what's happening all the time. People have a loving experience. I don't like to say fall in love with somebody. We use the term rise in love in this situation, because the heart is your highest capacity. The mind is a wonderful thing, and we all need our guts and to maintain our bodily functions. But our heart is the gateway to the spiritual dimensions and our highest level of consciousness. The evolution of a soul's journey into becoming a more loving being, the expansion of a heart, because it can become a universal heart that opens up and expands to cover the whole universe, where everything is loved, everything is appreciated, and there's, just like I said, a delicacy to this. There's a whole realms of evolution that's available to people that process and work with their heart. Of course, it's just having more consciousness of this instrument. So this is a wonderful system for developing a person's capacity to love. And if I go back 23 years to before I started this is not something that I would have. Somebody said, do you want to meditate on your heart? I said, no, why would I want to do that? But it's changed my life significantly for the better. And I can say probably within the last 3 or 4 years, so this is 20 years of doing this system, that I now feel like I can live in the world with an open heart, as painful as it is, and do the work I do and be in contact with a lot of the negative things that go on in our society, which are all painful to think about and read about and see, and still have this feeling of well-being, even with whatever pain is there. Being able to live in the world with an open heart, in a harsh world with an open heart, is a difficult thing, but with this spiritual system, it helps people do that, and it enhances one's life. We cannot live without love, and we cannot live without our hearts. Even if it's diminished or it's closed, our hearts are still functioning, our etheric hearts, not just our physical hearts. And our physical heart is the center, the life giver, that keeps the blood flowing and keeps our body functioning. And without it, there's no life at all. So it's something that we all have to develop, even in a difficult time, in a difficult world. And this is a wonderful system to do this. So again, the links are in the description box, and people can email me at pocketsofthefuture@gmail.com or contact me through the Pockets of the Future Facebook page if they have any questions. And the videos are up on YouTube. You can register for this system, and then the videos are there on YouTube. The services of this system are always free. The people that are called trainers that help distribute this transmission and help people start this system are all volunteers, and they usually have other jobs, and because God's love is always free. So again, you can contact me if you have any questions, and the links are in the description box. Everybody have a blessed day.